Right now, somewhere in America, a single diesel engine the size of a small room is turning the wheels of a freight train, and it will do it again tomorrow and every day after that. The biggest and most powerful diesel engines this country ever built don't just make big numbers. They make numbers that sound impossible. One of them displaces more than 180 liters. One weighs over 5 tons before you add a single drop of fuel. One was tuned so far past the factory's limits that the manufacturer finally had to clamp down. Most engines built for a highway wouldn't last a week doing what these 5 do. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one earned the number 1 spot and why the other 4 earned their place beside it. Number 5, the Detroit Diesel 8V92. Stand next to a running 8V92 and you do not hear a diesel rumble. You hear something closer to a chainsaw arguing with a jet. General Motors built its 92 Series 2-stroke from the middle of the 1970s, and this one is a V8 displacing 738 cubic inches, about 12 liters, making up to around 400 horsepower in its strongest turbocharged trims. The reason it screams instead of rumbling is simple. A 2-stroke diesel fires a power stroke on every single downward movement of the piston, instead of every second one like a normal engine, twice the firing, twice the noise. Drivers all across the country nicknamed the whole Detroit 2-stroke family the Screaming Jimmy, and if you ever ran one, you already know that sound never really leaves you. You found the 8V92 everywhere in its day. It powered highway trucks, it powered the big coach buses that crossed the country, and it powered cranes and construction rigs that never touched a paved road. Later versions even got one of the first electronic control systems ever put on a diesel, letting a computer manage the fuel. But no amount of technology could ever quiet the thing down. That relentless, high-pitched bark was baked into the 2-stroke design itself, and it is exactly why so many old drivers still light up the moment they hear one fire. The trade-off for all that scream was thirst, because a 2-stroke diesel burns a little oil right along with its fuel, and by the mid-1990s, tightening emissions rules finally forced the last of the Screaming Jimmies out of new trucks for good. It was not the biggest engine on this list, and it was not the most modern, but it might be the loudest argument ever made for the idea that character beats a spec sheet. The next engine took a much quieter approach and used it to conquer an entire industry. Number 4, the Cummins 855 Big Cam. While Detroit was busy screaming, Cummins was busy winning. The 855 was an inline 6 named for its 855 cubic inches of displacement, about 14 liters, and for the larger-than-normal camshaft that gave the Big Cam its name. It did not rev high, and it did not shout. It turned slowly, made enormous low-end torque, and returned the best fuel economy in its class, which is exactly what a long-haul trucker wants, and the market noticed. In 1975, Cummins held about 29% of the American big rig engine market. By 1983, that number had climbed to 63%. That is not growth, that is a takeover. Much of it rode on the back of this one engine, because owners quickly learned the Big Cam was a rock-solid million-mile machine that just kept going. If you ever ran one past 1,000,000 miles on nothing but oil changes and fuel filters, you already know why Cummins owned the road in those years. Part of the secret was the fuel system. The Big Cam used Cummins' own mechanical pressure time injection, a rugged design with no delicate electronics to fail out on the road. A driver could work on it himself with hand tools, and when it finally did wear out after hundreds of thousands of hard miles, a rebuild brought it right back to life instead of sending it to the scrapyard. Cummins refined it through 4 generations, the big cam 1 through 4, each one a little cleaner and a little stronger, until it had quietly become the engine every other manufacturer was measured against. Eventually, tightening emissions rules pushed Cummins to replace the big cam with the N14, an engine so similar underneath that people joked it was just a big cam with a new badge. But the reputation was already made. The next engine took that same toughness and handed owners something dangerous, a computer they could talk their way around. Number 3, the Caterpillar 3406E. This one does not look like much. A plain straight 6 with none of the drama of a screaming V8 or a 5-ton monster. But that plain exterior hides one of the most heavily modified diesel engines in trucking history. Caterpillar introduced the 3406E in the early 1990s, right at the moment diesels were shifting from mechanical injection to electronic control. It was Cat's first fully electronic engine, meaning a computer, not a mechanical pump, decided exactly how much fuel went into each cylinder and exactly when. And that computer turned out to be surprisingly easy for owner-operators to talk their way around. From the factory, it made anywhere from 425 to 600 horsepower, with peak torque above 1,800 pound-feet, far more twisting force than any pickup on the road makes today. But hand a tunable computer to a generation of drivers who wanted more, and they took it. Documented tunes pushed this engine as high as 800 horsepower, nearly double where it left the factory. If you ran a tuned 3406E, drop your real number in the comments, because everyone who owned one swears theirs was the strongest ever built. Owners will tell you the magic was not just the power, it was the way it delivered it. One driver put it simply: his tuned 550 horsepower Cat would jump off a stoplight and leave a brand new 600 horsepower electronic truck sitting behind him, purely because the older engine had no turbo lag and no computer second-guessing his right foot. When he hit the throttle, the engine simply went. That instant, mechanical response is a big part of why drivers chase these engines then, and why they still hunt down clean examples today. That flexibility came at a cost. Push an engine years past the limits it was designed around, hauling heavy through real heat, and eventually something gives: a cracked piston, a cooked turbo, a cylinder liner that was never built for that kind of pressure. When Caterpillar finally replaced it, tightening emissions rules were the main reason, but part of what Cat got back was control over an engine that drivers had spent a decade tuning right around. Those first 3 were all built for a highway. The next one was not built for a road at all. Before we get to the final 2, the single biggest engine on this list, and the single most powerful, if you want to keep seeing videos like this one, take a second to subscribe so you never miss what is coming next. Number 2, the Detroit Diesel 16V149. Forget the highway completely. This is where the numbers stop making sense. General Motors built the 149 series 2-stroke starting in 1966, and the 16-cylinder version is a V16 displacing about 39 liters. It is longer than the entire bed of a full-size pickup, and it weighs over 5 tons bone dry before you add a drop of fuel or a gallon of coolant. This is not an engine you lift with a hoist. It is an engine you lower a building around. In its naturally aspirated form, the 16V149 made around 1,000 horsepower, and its turbocharged versions climbed well past that, some approaching 2,000. You did not find these bolted into trucks. You found them deep in the hulls of ships, buried inside mining equipment and spinning massive generators. The 20-cylinder member of the same family push close to 3,000 horsepower out of a single block. If you have ever stood next to one of these at full song, you know it does not just make noise. It rearranges the air inside your chest. To put its size in perspective, a single 149 block can stretch past 9 feet long and stand taller than the average man. These engines spent their lives in places most people never see. Deep in the engine rooms of tugboats and ferries, buried inside enormous mining machines, and sitting behind the backup generators that keep hospitals and factories alive when the power grid goes down. When one fires up under a full load, you do not just hear it from across the room, you feel it come up through the floor and through your own ribs. The trade-offs were exactly what you would expect. It was enormous. It drank fuel by the barrel, and by around the year 2000, emissions and efficiency finally retired the whole 149 family for good. And yet even a 5-ton V16 making close to 2,000 horsepower is not the most powerful American diesel on this list. Not even close. Number 1, the EMD 710. The most powerful diesel America ever put to everyday work does not wear a truck badge. It wears a railroad's. General Motors built it through a division called Locomotive, and the 710 is a 2-stroke locomotive engine that displaces 710 cubic inches in each individual cylinder. In its 16-cylinder form, that adds up to more than 185 liters of displacement, producing well over 4,000 horsepower. A single one of these makes more power than the other 4 engines on this entire list put together. This is the engine that moves the country. Since 1983, the 710 has hauled mile-long freight trains weighing thousands of tons across deserts and over mountain passes, running day and night for decades at a stretch, in every kind of weather, almost without complaint. Its 2-stroke soul traces straight back through the 645 and the 567, 2 engines General Motors first built in the 1930s, which means the basic idea behind it has been moving America for nearly a century. Here's the part that surprises most people. That engine does not actually turn the train's wheels directly at all. It spins an enormous generator, and the electricity that generator makes is what drives a motor at every axle. It is really a rolling power plant on steel wheels, and it is built to be repaired almost forever. Each cylinder is its own removable power pack that a crew can pull and replace without ever tearing the whole engine down, which is a big reason these locomotives stay in service for 40 and 50 years. One engine, a handful of cylinders you rebuild one at a time, pulling the freight that keeps an entire country stocked. There's nothing else on wheels quite like it, and the scale it works at is almost impossible to picture. A single modern locomotive built around this engine can haul thousands of tons on its own across hundreds of miles of open track. Couple a few of them together on the nose of a heavy freight, and they will move more tonnage in a single trip than hundreds of loaded semi-trucks could ever carry. So much of what fills your life, the food on your table, the fuel in your tank, the lumber in your walls, and the cars in your driveway, rode on the back of this engine, or a few thousand more just like it, at some point on its way to you. The next time you are stopped at a railroad crossing, watching a train roll past for what feels like 10 full minutes, listen to that low, steady thunder rolling out of the lead unit. That is the sound of the small room-sized engine from the very start of this video, the biggest and most powerful American diesel most people will ever stand beside, quietly doing the single hardest hauling job in the entire country. No truck engine ever built comes close. 5 engines, 5 completely different jobs, and one country's iron behind every one of them. The screaming Jimmy that gave diesel its voice, the big cam that conquered the highways, the 3406E that Caterpillar had to rein back in, the 5-ton 149 monster, and the 710 that quietly moves America every single day. So which one deserves the #1 spot on your list? Tell us in the comments which of these 5 you would put at the very top and exactly why. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and watch the next video above.